future. I'm your host, Dan Sebastiano, joined by filmmaker Mike Messier.
Hey, everybody. How's it going, everyone?
And WWE superstar Rico Costantino. Rico, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Hello, everybody.
You know, the Roundtable was originally started by an old friend of mine, Jeff the Ref, who is no longer with us, and I'm going to continue hosting the show in his honor. The idea of the Refs Roundtable was a conversation of everything sports and entertainment. And it's funny we talk conversation because what is the old rule of thumb? Two things you never bring up in the conversation with your friends or family are politics and religion. And that's the topic of today's conversation. We're going to talk politics and religion in sports entertainment. Rigo, you seem like you want to add something?
Yeah, you had 2 out of 3. You talk no politics, no religion, and no sports.
Yes, sports is another one.
Yeah, but we're doing the 2 and 3. Show, yeah,
as a wrestling show, I think we can forgive the sports.
Yeah,
so,
they're on hiatus anyway.
That's very true. Before we get started, I do want to start on a bit of a somber note. Wrestling world's a little darker this week. As you know, officially, California officials confirmed that Shad Gaspard died in the ocean as he was swept away. His last act being saving his son. So a true hero to the end.
Yep.
In the commentary world, Mania 411 is mourning the unexpected loss of Larry Zonka, who's a good commentator in the sports world.
When did this happen?
This was, I believe, Wednesday.
Larry Zonka was the co-host when I was Gladiators.
Really?
Yeah, he was the co-host.
No. I'm not talking about the Dolphins running back. This is Larry Zonka, the Mania 411 commentator.
Scared the tar out of me.
Sorry, Rico.
Whew.
But Larry was a good commentator. He was a young guy. So
okay. Condolences there too. I thought you meant Hall of Famer, and like I said, I knew that Zonka. So okay, but does it change the fact that we have lost a soul?
That's true. I understand. So the Wrestling with the Futures family, our thoughts are with Shad and Larry's family and friends in this dark time.
Yeah.
So as we look forward, guys, I appreciate you being here. Like I said, the plan for today, we're going to discuss politics and politics and you got me thinking sports now, Rico. Politics and religion in the world of sports entertainment. So to break it down, we'll start with the obvious. Religion in wrestling as an angle or a spot. And to do that, Mike, we're going to start with what is obviously the most probably well talked about, at least in the last 20 years or so. And that was the infamous pay-per-view match featuring Shawn Michaels and God against Vince and Shane McMahon. Now, for those that don't remember that atrocity, and I apologize if I'm injecting too much opinion already, it started from a WrestleMania match between Shawn Michaels and Vince McMahon, which Shawn Michaels won, followed Vince McMahon cutting a promo blaming divine intervention because Shawn Michaels, being a born-again Christian, had become part of that. And this led to a series of vignettes where Vince McMahon recorded in what was set up to look like a chapel or a church where he challenged God and claimed he was better than God. And that led to a match where, of course, after some shenanigans, being the evil McMahons, that Vince pinned Shawn Michaels, thus winning the match and being able to declare himself better. So, Rico, having worked for him, I'm going to bounce this first question.
I just had to dab off my tongue because I just bit it on what you just said because of what he did.
I see Rico selling the punch at every turn.
Right. Oh. So Rico, that's perfect because I'm going to bounce this first question to you. What you've worked for Vince McMahon, you've met him, you've known him in the past. What mindset does a man put himself in to book an angle where he books himself over God?
You want my opinion or?
Yeah, just
my opinion. Arrogant, obstinate, no respect. To call out somebody like God, and then include him in a performance. The Bible is very clear in several scriptures. And to clarify to the audience, I am not a theologian. Okay, but I am was an ordained minister. I could marry and bury. Okay, and we'll get into it later about sports and God and what you're doing.
Right.
How you represent God. But as far as that angle, the 2006 angle, complete blasphemy, complete disrespect for our Creator. All right, and I'll make a general statement because everybody believes in their Creator, Buddha, uh, but there is a Creator. Okay, uh, mine happens to be God. God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. That's my belief. Okay, so to start off, I don't want to offend anybody. They have their own belief. But I guarantee if Vince McMahon said he's going to take on one of Allah in a match and do what he did on the video that Mr. Messier sent me, there'd have been a lot of trouble and a lot of violence.
Yeah,
the fact that we live in America is the reason why he's probably still walking.
Right. It's interesting you mentioned that. We'll actually get to Vince McMahon offending Islam here in a bit.
Oh.
So, Mike, continuing with this, the obviously the reception was very negative.
Yes.
The match didn't go over well, and the vignettes were heavily panned. But what as Rico mentioned, other than arrogance, what do you, from the filmmaker standpoint, like what could you possibly hope to gain other than putting yourself over in this? Who is this designed to appeal to?
As a Christian myself, you try to look. I'll try to look at possibly the positive of that storyline that was not terribly well conceived or executed, which is if you're exposing this storyline to say 2 million people, and say 20 people say, how come Vince McMahon and Shawn Michaels are talking about God, and how come Shawn Michaels is getting on his knees on the the Titantron entrance every time he comes to the ring? If 30 or 50 people decide they're going to pick up a Bible and explore Christianity because of this storyline, then you would say that 20 or 50 people had a religious evolution because they saw something on television that, although the message was clouded and controversial and stupid in its execution, somewhere there was a seed planted for some viewers. So that's trying to find a seed of goodness or positivity out of that. For most of us, yes, for most of us that are not going to be so easily influenced by a WWE storyline for our religious beliefs, you're going to find it either boring or offensive. And I think Rico would probably say it was offensive. I found it more boring. I found it more just WWE coming off of the Attitude Era, kind of what we now call the Ruthless Aggression Era. A lot of stuff they did during the Ruthless Aggression Era was just as attitudinal as the Attitude Era. It just was different because they weren't feuding with WCW. They had all this talent, including Rico, under one roof. So to me, Shawn Michaels, I think, provoked Vince McMahon a little bit because they are personal friends. Shawn had a religious conversion through his wife, the former Nitro girl, very beautiful woman, the mother of his children. And I think that maybe Vince and Shawn wanted to take that real life conversation that maybe they were having, Shawn's Christianity, Vince's either atheism or agnosticism, if I said that right.
Agnostic.
Thank you.
That's right, Rico.
Agnostic. Yes, I'm from the South or the North, so I can't speak. But in any event, they had to take that behind the scenes conversation because look, guys, if you're a Christian and you have a friend that's an atheist, you might have a running conversation. So what I think happened is that Vince and Shawn had a real life running conversation and they put it in the ring. And it was probably
kind of
more
life imitating art.
Right. It was probably more entertaining to them than it was to us, is what I'm thinking.
That's, I'll go ahead, Rigo.
Okay. I have an atheist friend. I'm sure you've heard of him. Kenny Bolin.
Sure.
He is an atheist. And I always get him when I sneeze. He tells me, "God bless you." I'm like, "What? What'd you say? God bless you?" But I tease him. But he's an atheist, and that's okay. I'm a Christian. But that never affects our relationship. I don't try to convert him. He doesn't try to convert me. And even me as a Christian, as I am, I don't Bible thump people. I don't walk around and go, you got to do this, pop, like a chair. This is what I believe, and this is my world, and this is how I do. Now, if you come in offending my world, I'm going to defend my world. Okay? On this angle that we're talking about with the 2006, there are positive things. Okay? I mean, I could take this and spin this another way. Now, we're all going on the glass half empty. Okay? We're looking at it like that because of Vince McMahon. We know that when WCW Bischoff started stealing Vince's talent, a lot of people left. So a lot of his heels left. So he did something very smart. He made himself the top heel because he's not going to leave his own company. Yeah. Okay. So he was smart there. So with the thing with Shawn Michaels, and did I like the angle? No. Could have been done better? Yeah. Should he have got advice? Yes. But there were things that they didn't do that is kind of skirting it. Like if Shawn Michaels was getting beat up and then he went to the corner and held his hand out for a tag to God and nobody showed up and then Vincent or Shane started beating him up, that's where I would have had a problem.
Right.
But they didn't do that. But Shawn prayed before, okay? He prayed beforehand and went down. He took on the match. It was definitely a handicap match. Shawn never called upon God. He said he believed in God.
You're saying that the fact that they booked it as kind of a more satirical mockery instead of him actually having a real partner in the ring, Vince selling to a spotlight or something like that, actually made it a little more palatable.
Well, I think Vince going over the top has created what we're talking about now. The light coming down and him saying, oh, God's coming, blah, 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 blah. That's a little bit of mockery. I got scripture to back that up. God does not, even after Jesus Christ, God does not dwell in a temple of men made of hands.
Right.
That's Acts, that's Galatians, and I can get into that if you want. But what I'm saying is I think defending, not defending, I think Vince took it a little too far. Shawn brought it in, like I said, by not going for the tag. Shawn won WrestleMania, so Vince wants to be the winner here. Okay? He had help. Didn't the Spirit
Squad? Yeah.
Okay, so it took an insurmountable odds to beat Shawn and God.
Right.
But Shawn never, ever denounced God, took the loss as a man, and never made an excuse. I never heard of it. From what you sent me, I did some other research. I never heard Shawn say a promo that God deserted me.
Right. No, he didn't. No.
Okay.
They had built his born again Christianity as part of his character, but it was a very respectful, because obviously, the whole lost his smile. He was in a bad place with the drugs and other things. And he turned his life around, and he gave a lot of the credit to Christianity and to his faith. So the God angle before it got perverted was actually done with a monicum of respect and admiration.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, half full, half empty.
Exactly.
I think Vince was trying to put himself over as such a heel and such an atheist, that he mocked. Now that's against the book.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's against it. But what was he trying to do? And nobody knows except Vince himself.
Right.
But you don't go around. I'm only speaking about this. Wait till we get to the other ones and we'll go there. But I'm just speaking about.
We'll cover it all.
Yeah, but I'm just speaking about this. Vince's attempt, which he didn't get much advice, really made him look like an asshole. Sorry, Vince. You look like an asshole doing what you did. You go into a church and you're mocking God. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? A lot of people said that here in this Bible. A lot of people said that. And then when not expected, he showed up. Daniel the Lions.
And you'd think that
David
having...
Goliath.
Go ahead, Mike.
You'd think that having a son-in-law who calls himself the King of Kings might turn Vince's cold heart around. I mean, that's one thing that people don't talk about. If you look at the WrestleMania 22 entrance of Triple H, a lot of people compare that to Conan. I compare that. It looked like Jesus on steroids. I mean, you have Triple H coming in.
Did he call himself King of Kings?
Yeah, that was the King of King. Bow down to the King is kind of his heel moniker, and then the game, and because he has two different entrance songs. He's got the game, and he's got Bow Down to the King, and the King of Kings is more of his heel character, which I'll get at here in a minute.
Okay, all right.
But to go off what you guys were saying is, you got to look at who you're marketing to. But before we continue, I wanted to kind of get into the conversation, let everybody kind of get a feel for how the roundtable is going. Before we continue, I want to make one quick announcement, a huge one for the show. Obviously, this is going up on a Thursday. Next Thursday, the special guest on Wrestling with the Future will be superstar Bill Dundee. So that's a huge win for us, and we're looking forward to the chance to talk to him. He was anybody that was ever a fan of the Territory Days, huge name there. So to get a feel for how everything's going with the show, superstar Bill Dundee will be our guest, and I'm really looking forward to talking to him.
Hey, Dan, real quick. Two things. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think Mike's going to say the same thing. Your camera's starting to shake. Whatever you're doing is making your camera shake. So put something underneath it or harden it up, because when you're talking, I guess you're putting your arms.
Who's that? Me?
I'm going to have to check for my camera's on a tripod, so I'm going to have to check for a cat.
Okay. Well, maybe it's just the excitement of superstar Bill Dundee, but I just wanted to say that WCW fans might remember superstar Bill Dundee, I think, is Sir William, and he escorted Steven Regal to the ring, or William Regal, Steven Regal, the WCW television title in the '94 era. But also as a competitor, Bill Dundee is on the Mount Rushmore of Memphis wrestling, along with Austin Idol, Jerry Lawler, and Jimmy Hart in my book. Yep. And I believe that Bill Dundee wrestled wrestling's first scaffold match against Koko Beware.
Wow.
That sounds about right. So, I mean, huge name there. But continuing with our talk, Mike, you talked about the transition from the Attitude Era to Ruthless Aggression. We're going to step back a little bit into the Attitude Era, continuing with the WWF, a series of angles, maybe more spots they did that the internet community has since dubbed the Russifictions, where the Undertaker, using his symbol, would sort of in a crucifixion style, but it was the sacrifice to the character that had been identified as the greater power, with, of course, the most prominent of his victims being a young Stephanie McMahon, but Steve Austin, among others, faced that. So going back to that moniker of where you draw the line and we're going to touch on a much more obvious crucifixion image here shortly, but is it different because it's a symbolic sacrifice on something that kind of resembles a cross, or is that a line you just don't blur? Rico, what are your thoughts on that?
Me or Mike?
Rico, what are your thoughts on that? You're the...
Okay. Crucifixion was a form of punishment. Greeks did it. Romans did it. Japanese did it. And they did crucify people upside down.
Yes.
Okay, so that crucifixion could last 3-4 hours, or you could last 3 or 4 days. Now, there was different type of crucifixions, and they say, they show Jesus carrying the cross and all that. That cross was 300 damn pounds.
Right.
So Jesus didn't carry the cross. He carried the cross beam, which is about 75 to 100 pounds. So that's what he carried through the city and was flogged with the leather, with the steel beads and all that stuff. But there was a lot of crucifixion going on, and Romans weren't the only ones that did it. Like I said, upside down. There's even, it's not really confirmed, but the Apostle Paul was crucified upside down. Okay. If people kept lasting too long, they would break the tibia and fibia of these people's bones.
Yeah, they would break your legs and you'd suffocate.
Well, there's legs, but the tib and fib is easy because and you'd asphyxiate because your arms are way up here. Not only did they not only nail, they never nailed through the hands. They always nailed through the radial ulna.
That's right.
Okay, or they tied. They would tie you. They not all this time now because cast iron back then was hard to come by. So
nails were worth a fortune.
Yeah, so they would reuse nails, the crucifixion nails. Like now, sometimes they do this, but then they would put the feet on either side of that footstool and run the nail this way. So now you were like this, and then they had different styles because you were bent, your knees were up. But whatever, they just wanted to make it humiliating. That was the whole big thing of that.
So, Mikey, as Rico explained in great detail, the image of the crucifixion, with that carrying such a connotation of faith and death and punishment, do you think what do you think the mindset was back then? I know the Attitude Era was all about pushing every envelope you could get your hands on, but the mindset of using something so symbolic just as kind of I don't even want to say a throwaway, but it didn't matter in the grand scheme of the character. It was just they could have done anything for that. What drives them? What do you think drives them to make that kind of symbolic gesture?
Well, I think what drives them is money, and I think in the Attitude Era, we're talking 97, 98, 99, there still was, throughout those years, no matter which side was winning, WWE or WCW, WWF at the time pushed the envelope, inspired by ECW, pushed the envelope as far as they could, because of their relationship with the USA Network as compared to WCW and the TNT and TBS networks. WWF had more leeway. So they took advantage of that. And the culture for kids growing up now, this was the era of South Park. This was the era of Howard Stern, Private Parts being the #1 book in the country.
Right.
The late 90s, in the wake of the death of Kurt Cobain, Tupac Shakur, Biggie Smalls, pop culture was pushing the envelope hardcore, and in a way that not even today, I mean, just now we're seeing on AEW swearing and on WWE swearing, but we hadn't seen that in like 10 or 15 years in wrestling. So in the late 90s, the culture was push the envelope. The Undertaker, my theory on this, guys, is that The Undertaker had been a very favored wrestler for a long time at this point, for about 10 years in WWF. But when The Rock was a super popular babyface, when Austin was a super popular babyface, you had to have a couple of heels. And and Foley became a super over babyface with The Book and Have a Nice Day and Sacco. So they had to take The Undertaker, who was kind of the last man standing of the end of the golden era, the late 80s, early 90s. They made him a heel. But for people to really boo The Undertaker, their natural inclination is to cheer The Undertaker. To boo this guy, you're going to have to make him the Ministry, the Ministry. They had to make him as close to a Satanist as they could without saying that The Undertaker is a Satanist and he's leading a satanic cult. They had to,
which was the mantra behind the greater power. Now, I'm glad you mentioned Satanism, because we're going to move on to another gimmick that was very popular.
Well, wait,
go ahead, Rico.
Go there with Undertaker. Notice how they did Undertaker, the Ministry, acolytes and the Brood and all that stuff. They never really, not that I remember, unless you can enlighten me, did he really worship a deity of satanic? Was there a person?
They referred to what he called a greater power, which was later revealed to be Vince McMahon.
Okay,
so it was.
So there was no.
No, there was no. I mean, you had the ministry tone of the acolytes with the symbols on their chest and Midian with the star on his forehead, but there was no direct. I'll say something I will mention in a bit here. Kevin Sullivan in Florida, where he was literally speaking in tongues, devil worshiping.
Right. So this is where I think Vince pushed that envelope, but pushed it okay. He is trying to get somebody who is a face, trying to get him to a heel.
Right.
So, like I said, crucifixion was the form of punishment back in that day. So when you put Stephanie upside down, or you put her on a cross, and you didn't do certain things, I think that is okay. You're trying to show a heel. He has a group. the deity, he held the deity, what did you call it? Power,
The higher power,
the greater power. Okay. So, but you didn't know who this greater power was, and eventually you found out it's Vince, and you're like, screw that. Who the hell is Vince McMahon?
Obviously, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but you see what I'm saying? It went,
right.
and then you found out who the deity was. Oh, it's a stupid Vince.
Yeah,
the reason why it was stupid. It was stupid Vince because they were supposed to bring in Christopher Daniel from the Independents, and Vince thought he was too short.
Right.
You got it.
Vince rejected him at the day they met because he said he was too small.
Yeah, but I tell you, that's the first guy I ever wrestled in EWF.
Really?
Yeah, the first man I ever wrestled, my first match was Christopher Daniels, and he was the Fallen Angel.
Was this in Ohio or?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Empire Wrestling Federation, the Little League. Right. Jesse Hernandez. The first guy I wrestled and got me through my match was Christopher Daniels.
Very cool. I did not know that.
So
there you go. Wrestling with the future audience. You learn something new every day on this program.
Also, for historical context, real quick, Marilyn Manson at the time was a big pop culture act. Like Marilyn Manson was huge around this time. And his concerts were filled of representations.
Yeah,
symbols.
this was the evolution from the Marilyn Manson to the Hot Topic era and all that. Yeah. But moving on, you were talking with this greater power, something that happened. We're going to continue to travel back in time in early 1990s WCW when Kevin Sullivan embraced the Taskmaster gimmick, and he also addressed a higher power. And this was WCW Kevin Sullivan. We're going to get to his Florida territory days, but this is in WCW. He embraced a higher power, and they gave him the power to recruit what would end up being the Dungeon of Doom, which was he sold his soul to kind of a symbolic power to get what he needed to defeat Hulkamania. So I'm wondering, because obviously the Taskmaster turned evil, and that didn't work. Hulkamania, the big World War III match, or excuse me, World War III match where the Hulkamaniacs defeated the Dungeon of Doom, and then that's the Giant introduced, and some other things. But you see the comparison where it's very common to have your wrestlers, without directly implying Satan or some of these other evils, you go into kind of I'm going to sell my soul, or I'm going to imply that I sold my soul to a greater power. But now, getting into the final bit we want to talk about with angles or spots is the one that I know, Rico, you mentioned was easily the worst, is a moment in ECW where a match between Raven and the Sandman resulted in the Sandman being crucified on a very obvious beam wooden cross, and they even put a barbed wire crown of thorns on him. And now the thing that sticks out with this was wasn't part of the match. It wasn't like a crucifixion match. They really didn't touch on it very much after that on ECW programming. It just became a shock moment for shock moments, which Paul Heyman was known for at the time. But I'm wondering, Rico, you mentioned before in the conversation we had the other day preparing for this show that was just the worst. Like, where at the moment, picturing that image with, say, the Sandman on a literal crucifixion, where is that line where you cross it from a symbol to this is too much, just straight blasphemy?
I did reading, and I went back, and for crucifixions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Crucifixion was a normal form of punishment, like I've said before. Okay. If they want to punish a Sandman, they want to crucify him, tie him, put him on a crucifix, and do that, that's fine. The minute you put a crown of thorns on that man, you now have mocked Jesus Christ. Because that's, as far as I know, and as far as I've read, the literature I've read, and the theologians I've spoken to, Jesus was the only one that wore a crown of thorns because he claimed to be king of the Jews. Romans, mocking him, put the crown on him, but put a crown of thorns. The minute you put a crown of thorns on Sandman, now you're equivalating him to Jesus, which is blasphemy at the highest level, which insults me. When I saw that, I was enraged.
No, I can't argue with that. Mike, real quick, to add something to add to do you think it was worse because it was the Sandman character who was famous at the time for the beer drinking, bad-mouthed? I mean, ECW really didn't have any good guys, but the Sandman is about as far from a Jesus imagery as ECW had.
Yeah,
Do you think that made that symbol worse?
I don't think it made it worse. I mean, I think if they had done the same thing to Tommy Dreamer or Shane Douglas or one of the Pitbulls or a woman, I mean, they could have done it to Beulah or Francine, and it would have been even more disturbing. I think Rico hit a great point that the barbed wire crown of, barbed wire crown, it's really weird. And
Right.
the interesting thing, if you want to give
go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, if you want to give them any credit, is that they did. The audience, that hardened ECW Philadelphia audience, was aghast, and at the end of the night, Paul Heyman, I guess, sent Raven, Scott Levy, out into the ring, and Scott Levy, as Raven, broke character and basically apologized. And so that apology to the fans and Scott or Raven basically said, "You people respected my privacy when I had to go away to deal with personal issues, and I'm going to respect your religious beliefs. For those of you that I offended, I sincerely apologize." And he put the microphone down, and they never aired the broadcast. And the first time I really saw the footage was on the WWE ECW DVD release moving forward to like 2005.
Right. It's interesting you mentioned that, because the first time I saw it, they had the worst or best of, I guess, whichever way you want to look at it, of ECW a couple years back. That was the first time I'd ever seen it. But moving on now, we looked at gimmicks, and we looked at angles and spots. I want to look at gimmicks. Now, we're going to break this down. Most religious gimmicks throughout wrestling last almost instantly. They're gone before they start. So we're going to look at a couple of religious inspired gimmicks that came and went before people even realized. I guarantee there's going to be a lot of people in the audience that don't even remember these characters at all. And the first one I want to touch with, because he disappeared because of a direct complaint from the Catholic Church, was the character of Friar Ferguson. Now, Friar Ferguson, if you guys remember, was just a fat, goofy, evil monk. And, that, like I said, poor crowd reaction combined with complaints from the Catholic Church and obviously other religious groups, because you had a friar that was pitched as evil, which is something we'll get to. We'll get to in a bit.
Booger Bastion.
Right.
Bastion Booger and
Chuck
exactly.
Norman. I mean,
Mike Shaw, who was actually, I believe, Makin Singh and Calgary Stampede, had some of the best matches with Owen Hart as a big man. But you're right, Dan. He was repackaged several times by WWF, and Friar Ferguson is one of those characters that didn't make it.
Correct. Now, another one
can I say
something?
Sorry,
go ahead,
quick?
Rico.
Okay.
Yeah, of course.
Now, I'm just to back up what I've been saying and what we've been talking about. In Galatians, all right, chapter 6. I'm going to go to verse 6 and 7. It says, "And let the one who is taught the word share all good things with him who teaches." And 7 says, "Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever a man sows, this he shall so reap." So you're going to start mocking God, whether it's Vince, Raven, whatever. You gotta pay atonement for this, whether it's here or whether it's up there. You're gonna have to do that. God's not mocked. You cannot use God as a acting tool. Okay. And I'm going to go this on both sides. Now, if you want to claim you're a Christian, born again, I know, because I don't know if you guys know this, but Angela knows this. I accepted Jesus Christ on the Meadowlark Lemon Show at the AIM conference on live TV. Okay. Yeah. And
Harlem Globetrotter, legend.
Yep. And I thought I was a Christian because I was Roman Catholic.
Right.
All right. I wasn't. And Meadowlark brought that to light, and I accepted Jesus on his show. But what I'm saying is that everything has a price with this. If you're a Christian, okay, you got to live Christian. Now, we understand wrestling. You're doing a job, you're entertaining and stuff like that. But if you're going to include God into your repertoire, you better be flawless.
Right.
Because and just as like I read in Galatians, God is not mocked. He's not something to make money off of. I also heard a story, and I don't want to divulge, but you know the Pisces, the fish.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I was taught that when two Christians sat together and they wanted to discuss Jesus, everybody over there carried sticks. One would draw a line this way, and if he knew you were a Christian, he drew a line the other way, which became the fish.
Mm-hmm.
So you could talk Christianity without being killed.
Right. It was the historical secret symbol.
Secret symbol. Shawn Michaels wore the fish on his chest. Vince was told, I got to blur this out. Middle Eastern countries, we're going to offend people.
Mm-hmm.
From what I heard, and I got to find it. It's not fact. So this is on rumor right now. Now, if this is true, this is bad. Vince and Shawn got together and said, okay, we're going to make it different looking and
Right.
put it on your shirt and then go out and make money on it.
It's in Sean's book.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No big
Okay.
secret.
It's in his book. Okay.
Sean's book. I pointed that out basically a year and a half ago. I was reading Sean's book and I was offended by that passage because
Yeah.
basically Sean, who claims all these Christian beliefs and I'm never going to wrestle again except in Saudi Arabia for a lot of money. Sean has displayed in my book hypocrisy, and
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it's
We're not gonna touch on Saudi Arabia, but
that's right.
But
No,
what
but what I'm saying is what Sean did is blasphemy. It's against the Holy Spirit. It's against God. It's against whatever he is saying he is.
yeah,
You know.
much like
Okay.
we talked about, much like we mentioned with the Undertaker, it's not uncommon for characters to twist slightly or redesign a religious symbol for their own sake. I know
Yeah.
Test had a cross.
This was more
We're
of
gonna
a
touch
behind
on,
this.
like some of the other characters we're going to touch on all
Right,
had that.
right.
Go ahead, Rico.
But what I'm saying is the Undertaker did what he did, but in the end, he revealed his higher power was Vince.
Was a person, correct?
Yeah, see, it wasn't a deity. It wasn't God. See, so I think he was safe there. He
Right.
did what he did with the acolyte. He did the angle, and I think that's an okay angle. You know,
Right, and
just
that's-
because you use satanic or you use God, whatever. And like I said before, Shawn was tag team partners with God, according to Vince.
Right.
I don't remember in those clips Shawn saying God was his tag team partner.
No, he definitely played it like he was going it in alone, and Vince was crazy.
Yeah, so he was
But,
going
you know,
in,
which
but
leads to go ahead.
God was on his side. God
Yes.
is on, now God's on everybody's side who accepts Jesus as their Lord and Savior. God's on their side. Okay, but like I said, which would have made it different is if Shawn was getting his butt kicked and he went to the corner to tag and then no tag.
And
that
then
would
God
have
gave
been,
him the short arm.
yeah. See, and that would
God
have
gave
been
him
bad.
the Barry Windham Lex Luger 1988.
There
Yeah,
you
I was
go.
gonna say.
Dan's got such a nice outline for this show. Let's let Dan go back to
Okay.
the outline.
Go
But
back.
no, you're letting you guys talk. That's half the fun of a roundtable is the conversation. But as we were touching on Friar Ferguson, continuing with the offensive religious gimmicks that went nowhere before they became the headbangers, Mosh and Thrasher wrestled for a very short time as the Flying Nuns, which was another gimmick that went nowhere and ended up with complaints and offended people, and they ended up pulling it pretty instantly. Continuing with the religious gimmick, which interestingly goes back to what you were talking about, Rico, with changing some of the religious symbols. Originally pitched as a foil to the Undertaker in the mid to late 2000s. I guess I'm trying to think when it was specifically.
Mordecai.
Yes.
I came up with him
with his white hair and his all white suit and his white cross. Now Mordecai, obviously, he ended up getting repackaged later on.
Kevin
Thorne, and Mordecai, his debut pay-per-view match against Hardcore Holly, and he it was rough. But Mordecai was obviously built up. But he spent more time on promos than he did actually in the ring because it was another character that got dropped pretty instantly. Keeping with characters that spent more time on promos, we're going to actually get a little bit away from the Christianity symbol and look more towards just religion as a whole. Is the cult side. Now, Bray Wyatt in his current incarnation has a puppet in the Wyatt house named Waylon the Buzzard. Now, Mercy the Buzzard. And Mercy the Buzzard is named after Waylon Mercy, who was a character that helped he helped Bray Wyatt create the Wyatt family character. Waylon Mercy was a cult leader. He wore the shirt, he had the white pants, he had the fancy speak. That was another character that, despite being popular, at least among certain fans, it didn't really go very far. Now, continuing with that, you have Bray Wyatt, Kevin Sullivan. I'm curious. I'm going to ask Mike your thoughts on this, since you tend to have the narrative opinions. Is the cult leader is usually booked as very common. It's not, I would say, very common, but it's not an uncommon character to be the cult leader, the sharp tongue. However, in the case of Bray Wyatt, in the case of the Taskmaster, in the case of Waylon Mercy, they're always booked weak, and I can't remember a cult leader ever winning a feud long term. I'm wondering, why is cult such an easy throwaway gimmick to put on somebody you're not going to push?
I will tell you one guy that I think did do it well and was used correctly as a cult leader was aforementioned Raven in ECW, and
right,
the Flock. And to a less, and if you look at ECW, see, the thing with fans now is if they go to the WWE network to watch ECW, it's not the same because they don't have the music. If you saw Raven coming to the ring with that song, "Hey, hey, come out and play," by the band, the slip in my mind right now, the name of the band, but Raven, the Beulah McGillicuddy, Kimona Leia, Brian Lee, the feud with Dreamer, and Raven was over.
Yes, now that was ECW Raven. WCW Raven, the Flock, outside of Perry Saturn and the occasional Reese or Horace, Sick Boy, Riggs, Kidman, Loki, they were all jobbers, pretty much.
Well, they basically is because WCW creatively, and Eric Bischoff has said this many times on his podcast, 83 Weeks, Eric Bischoff did not get or appreciate the Raven character. Mm-hmm. So they signed him for more money than he was making in ECW. But if the guy who's running creative, Bischoff, does not believe in the character, then it's only going to go so far. So they gave Raven a grand total of 1 day with the U.S. title. I think he beat DDP and he lost to Goldberg the next night on Raw. I'm sorry, the next night on Nitro. Mm-hmm. But I would say these are the cult leaders that have worked. Raven, Bray Wyatt, and everyone else, from the Waylon Mercies who didn't last to the Truth Commission guy who's now Cyrus. He had the Truth Commission for a cup of coffee in WWF in '97.
Right. Now, a lot of people, that's actually, I'm glad you brought that up. We're going to touch on that a little bit in the political side. But so go ahead.
My point is that I think it's an easy fix when you have what I call mid-card mania. If I were the booker, one of these type of midweek shows would be dedicated once a month to what I would call mid-card mania. I'd take all my mid-card wrestlers, the Apollo Cruzes of the world, and I'd feature them in a show without a main event with a Roman Reigns or a Seth Rollins or a Drew McIntyre. I'd let the mid-card guys shine.
Now, and I would remember that's what Nitro did with it when they first went to 3 hours. Was the first hour was your cruiserweights and your undercard.
Yeah, because they were unopposed because Raw wasn't on yet.
Correct.
So from 8 to 9. So my point with mentioning mid-card mania was I think when the bookers or the creatives, they have an excess of talent. They have a Reese. They have a Billy Kidman. They have, a bunch of guys that they don't know what to do with. The easy fix is put them with Raven. Put a T-shirt on them. Put the hood on them. You have that now in AEW with the mask guys. They're whatever that group is called.
Oh my God!
As my buddy Jim Cornette calls them, the Dork Order.
The Dark Order. Now, guess what? I actually kind of dig the Dark Order. I don't know why, but I just kind of do. But you take a bunch of bums and you put them in masks and you say you're the Dark Order, and suddenly you've gotten guys who knows, maybe they're the younger brothers or the young boys, as it were, of the wrestling group, and they give them something to do.
Now,
so
because it creates a dichotomy.
Right.
It creates a dichotomy, just like they did with Kane. Kane was Kane with that mask. As soon as they took it off him, he no longer became Kane.
That's true.
So now you got a bunch of guys. Yeah, now you got these guys in mask, which creates a mystique, a dichotomy, and you can do anything you want with them. So go ahead with the other thing.
Let me ask some, Rico. Touching on the what Mikey was saying, if you have these cult leaders who maybe work, or even if they're someone like a Raven or a Bray Wyatt who can carry their own in the ring and on the mic, if you book them, or if you fill their cult, their stable with losers that amount to nothing, that creative has nothing for, or in the case of the Dark Order, that the heaviest one is like 110 pounds, where they're not a threatening presence. Do you feel that weakens the character?
Well, we're going to go back to Raven ECW. I'm going to say he had a lot of input on what his character was going to do, and that's why it was so successful. As soon as they put him somewhere else, somebody got the great idea that they had a better idea than him, but he was making it work over there. Why fix it if it's not broken? He had a system, and it was working. You brought him here for more money and all this stuff, and now you told him what he was going to do. Raven knew what he wanted to do. He knew how to get to the crowd. He had the psychology. I don't care what you're doing, okay? Mordecai, okay? I knew the guy, okay? They did to Mordecai what they did to me. You're the stylist. Okay, what kind of stylist? Am I a hairstylist, foot stylist? But they just said, work it out, flesh it out yourself. Well, they did the same thing to Mordecai. And unfortunately, at that time, at his age and his experience, he could not flesh out a Mordecai character.
Mm-hmm.
If you'd have gave it to me and you told me you wanted a Mordecai character, I'd have fleshed out a Mordecai character, because I'm like I said, and I've told you and I told Mike and I even told Angelo, the characters that Vince told me to do is exactly 180 of my personality.
Right, which goes to what you were saying, and we talked about before, Rigo, with the best wrestlers being yourself turned up to 11.
Yeah.
Which I'm curious. I'm glad you brought that up, because that'll be a good stepping point for the next part we're going to talk about, is the religious characters that actually stuck around. These are the characters that worked, and some of them obviously maybe inspired slightly by the person being more true to who they are. So the first one we're going to look at, we talked about him already. This was in the Florida territory, and this is probably the best or worst example, depending on how you feel, is Kevin Sullivan. Kevin Sullivan in the Florida territory was a literal devil worshiper. He wore makeup. He spoke in tongues. He talked about Lucifer. He was a literal devil worshiper who sold his soul to try and be better in Florida. And that character, now for Florida and the territory, that character got over well. It was popular in the territories.
Bible Belt.
What's that?
Bible Belt.
Yeah. Kevin Sullivan carried that character with him for most of his career. He was some version of the Taskmaster, even much later on in the Indies. And I think that shows that sometimes, and I've met Kevin Sullivan at conventions. I've crossed paths with him. He's a down-to-earth, nice guy, very, very good heart, which is unusual for someone who so well plays evil, pure evil, to be a good person. So who knows? But continuing with the devil gimmick, we're going to go on to one of my favorite talkers in the history of the business, and I think the second best laugh only to Ted DiBiase, is a guy by the name of James Mitchell. Now, James Mitchell ran the character the Sinister Minister, he called himself.
And I saw a little bit of that.
Correct. He was a manager in several promotions, and he always had the red coat, and he had the beard, and he very much...
And the eyebrows.
Correct, and the eyebrows. James Mitchell looked like you would expect the devil to look in an 80s movie. If the devil is sitting at a restaurant making deals, it's going to look like the way James Mitchell did. And that's actually interesting. That's something he carried over into some of the faith-based promotions that came up, was playing the foil to defeat the devil at the end of the show. So, Mike, I'm going to touch on you.
Defeat the devil, or defeat an angel?
No, defeat the devil. He by beating the religious theme wrestling would want to defeat the devil at the end of the show.
Okay, so Sinister Minister was a devil.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Correct.
I lost you there. Got too many hits to the head. Sorry. So I had to catch up. Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
I understand. So Mike, we're touching on that. The character like a James Mitchell or Kevin Sullivan, these characters, these literal devils. Why do you think, compared to something like a higher power, or as Rigo mentioned, stuff that maybe doesn't entirely work? Why do you think if you straight devil, demon, 100% up, 666 imagery, that works? Why do people accept that? Is it because it's straight to the point, or is it because it's more evil? Why do you think that character works?
I'll quote once again, shout out to Eric Bischoff, and maybe he'll give us a retweet or something for all these shout outs to Bischoff. I know that, he was once involved in your wedding ceremony or your friend's wedding ceremony, Rico, a long time ago, Eric Bischoff. But
couple of buddies.
Yeah. Eric Bischoff said that wrestling needs to be in big, bold neon colors. Yeah. And I think Eric was maybe talking about Dusty Rhodes or other bookers who wanted to have nuances of gray, or the NWO. There'd be nuances of gray between red and white NWO and red and black NWO. Well, what basically Bischoff was saying is when wrestling is at its best, when the audience is connecting with it the most, it's big neon colors. Here's your good guy. Big neon color. Here's your bad guy. And I think the thing with the devil, let me just finish this. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Let me just finish this thought.
I'm just giving you the nod. You are absolutely 120% right. Go ahead, but I'm giving you the nod.
Well, it's like with this that Dan's bringing up, the difference between the higher power, Undertaker, who's a 6'9" badass that everyone's respected for 10 years in 1999, he's paying homage to an invisible higher power. And the big reveal is a fart in church, which is it's just Vince, who we've already seen feud with Stone Cold for 2 years by then.
Yeah.
That's vague. That is vague, and that is not focused, like a film. When you have a focused antagonist, like have you ever seen a movie that has a great antagonist? Rocky 1, it's Apollo Creed. But if you saw the movie Under Siege, it had Gary Busey and Tommy Lee Jones were both heels against Steven Seagal. Yeah. Now, Under Siege, because you got Erica Elniak and all these wonderful things, it's still a great movie. But you have two heels. You have Tommy Lee Jones and you have Gary Busey fighting for screen time. That makes that movie less great than, say, Rocky with Apollo Creed, or Die Hard, where you have the one kingpin bad guy.
Because you're dividing your hate. Yes, you've got to hate each one for going against the United States Navy, and one who was a secret operative who felt slighted. So now you cannot turn all your attention to Tommy Lee Jones because Gary Busey is trying to steal some spotlight. And so I understand what you're saying as a filmmaker.
Yes.
If you'd have had one heel, that it would have been a better movie.
Right. Only on the Roundtable can we get from wrestling to Steven Seagal movies.
Well, the point is that if you're the question is how come the higher power Vince McMahon didn't work, and there's still a popular meme of Vince taking off the robe and saying, "It's me, Austin. It was me all along." But if you say how come that was not as successful as James Mitchell in TNA and ECW and the Indies, and Kevin Sullivan as the devil worshiper in Florida and so forth, it's because focus, definitively. This is Kevin Sullivan. He's evil. He's not looking to someone else higher than him. He's the guy. Mitchell's the guy. I was not a huge. You should go ahead.
I was saying, you're saying that because instead of focusing on something vague like a higher power, because you're literally saying the villain is the devil, you can focus your heat more, and as such become just kind of a more successful character.
Correct. You're saying that Kevin Sullivan is the bad guy. He's not praying. He mentioned a Buddha Ding, the African god of fertility or whatever. But for the most part, if you went to see Dusty Rhodes versus Kevin Sullivan in the Eddie Graham Sports Complex, 1983, in Florida, you want to see Kevin Sullivan get his ass kicked. You wanted to see, his buddy Mark Lewin get his ass kicked. I mean, just to go back to that group real quick. I mean, Nancy Sullivan at the time, or who became Nancy Benoit. My God, was she smoking hot in those bikinis?
That was the woman gimmick too.
Yeah, but that was before the woman gimmick. She was.
Well, I'm saying that was the precursor. Her quiet, kind of dark demeanor. That was the precursor to the woman gimmick.
Yeah, she was smoking hot. You had Luna Vachon. You had Mark Lewin, who was a wrestler from the '60s, still holding on. I mean, that was the reason why that worked, guys, because it was a different era. You never saw anything like that in 1983 in a territory.
No.
You had them coming out with snakes. Rico hit upon it, the Bible Belt. You've got this area of Florida that's not used to seeing a smoking hot brunette in a bikini, with this older guy with these giant leg muscles. I mean, it was crazy.
And no offense, like I said, I respect one of the better minds in wrestling. Looking at Taskmaster Kevin Sullivan, I mean, in 1980s Nancy was visually out of his league to the fans too. I think that kind of turned an eyebrow.
But then again, like I was telling you when we spoke the other day, and even with Mordecai, you got to engulf the character you're going to be. If you're going to be a Satanist, you got to be a Satanist as a method actor. You have to take on this role. Mordecai flopped because
it's funny you mentioned method acting, because if you remember, like you mentioned Eddie Graham, I mean, Kevin Sullivan was a Satanist. He was the devil worshiper in an era where kayfabe was still real. He had to keep a lot of this aura when he was at the supermarket and out in the street. Yeah. So that was a good work on him. Now, continuing on with characters, I want to kind of do a flip from the devil demon characters to one who wore the collar at the dawn of the brand split in WWE. When the Dudley Boys split up, Devon became Reverend Devon. Now, Reverend Devon by the way, awesome theme music. If anybody looked that up, that was one of my favorite entrance songs of that era. But he came out with the collar and the Testify, and he, obviously the introduction of Batista as the Deacon with the money box.
That's how they got Batista up.
Right.
Is because of the Testify stuff.
Now, that was a preacher character who was the villain, which I kind of want to touch on, because we looked at all the different characters, and obviously we've talked at length already about Bray Wyatt and about The Undertaker. Now, Reverend Devon is unique because of the preacher gimmick, but if you look at the list that we went over, James Mitchell, Kevin Sullivan, the Reverend Devon, Bray Wyatt, The Undertaker, they're all heels. And the last one to mention that fits that mold wasn't entirely religious inspired, was the Brother Love character. Brother Love was a parody of the television evangelist at the time. The red face, I love you. And he did, the Brother Love show was done from a pulpit, which I think if you look at, and then we go back to the characters we talked about, the ones that flopped, your Flying Nuns, your Friar Ferguson, your Mordecai. Every religious gimmick that anybody really remembers in wrestling was a heel. Yeah. And now, Rico, I'm going to ask you, as a man from the business who's had to sit and think gimmicks before, why is it when religion, because even those such as Friar Ferguson or Reverend Devon, who will wear the crosses and the collars, every time a character is saddled with a religious gimmick, it's a heel? What drives the booker? What is the mentality in the writing room to write all religious characters as the bad guy?
Because that's what secular world sees them as. You got your Swaggarts, you got your Tim Bakers, you got all those people who claim to be men of God, okay, and they turn out wanting hookers, stealing money. I know Jim Baker, Jim Baker. Right. I know him. I've met Swaggart. I've met all these people. I was there when Jake the Snake confessed his life and gave his life to God to a minister. I was standing right there, was speaking to him. Mm-hmm. So I've seen this. And with Steve Martin, the movie Leap of Faith, he took after a certain evangelist, televangelist, and made this movie. But he went there telling the company that, I want to do this and this and this, but turned around and made this guy a shyster. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that's how America sees televangelists, except for Billy Graham. I really believe Billy Graham was and who he says he was. And I've met the Haggies, Marilyn Hickeys, Paul and Jan Crouch. I met Pat Robertson when he was running for president. I've been around a lot of these people. I know a lot of them. Okay. The America sees people like Jim Baker, Swagger, as they use the gospel to get money and get what they want. And I've found out the more somebody preaches against the subject, that's what their weakness is.
So
One's money, one's prostitution.
your opinion then is that the religious characters are marketed towards a world that's slowly viewing anyone who's overtly religious as a hypocrite or a bad person in general.
Not slowly. I mean, we've got how many proofs do we got?
The characters we've covered go back over 30 years. That's what I meant. Slowly is over the course of several decades.
But that's how America sees them, which is terrible. There are some great televangelists out there that really do work and preach the word of God, except that doesn't sell tickets. And these promoters want to sell tickets. So if you put a man in a collar, which you didn't make Devon a minister or a pastor, you made him a priest. Mm-hmm. So now he friggin' as America sees it, generally, he assaults altar boys. He's a pedophile.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've not done the Catholic or the Christianity base any favors, none whatsoever, because of what they've done to themselves. Okay, so it's going to take a heck of a writing team and somebody who would do a method act, who would actually take on that of a evangelist or a man of God to go in a ring where you got tweeners. There's no more good and evil. Everybody's a tweener.
Yeah.
So who's this guy gonna go against? He shakes hands and gets kicked in the crotch, and then how you go? How you gonna promote a man of God successfully? You can't, because there's no good and evil no more. There is none.
Mike, I'm gonna give you the final thought here before we move on.
Just to raise the exception to the rule, there was Reverend Slick, who helped bring Kamala to a heightened sense of himself. Reverend Slick, around 1991 or 92, went babyface. So there was Reverend Slick was a babyface, and they took the heel Slick manager, and in real life, the man
turned him face. Yeah,
turned him face, and so that. But they really never parodized Slick or his religion too much. It was just kind of an afterthought, something you'd see on primetime wrestling in passing. And
what about the Road Warriors? Who was the manager for the Road Warriors? Ellering.
Precious Paul Ellering.
Ellering. So when they became face, what happened? He quit doing his heel stuff.
Yeah.
But he didn't claim to be a Christian or anything like that, but he just quit doing heel stuff. Because the Road Warriors would just take care of their own.
That's the same mindset with the Bray Wyatt character when the Wyatt family was the face in their feud with some of the factions then of, we're the occultists, but now we're the good cultists. That goes to what you were talking about with the tweeners. But I mean, religion, we could spend all week talking about this. But the other topic we mentioned, the one they say, other than sports that you never bring up with family, is politics. And politics definitely had its moments in wrestling, especially with Linda McMahon being part of the Trump cabinet and having several runs for the Senate. The recent stories coming out of Florida with Vince and Linda's involvement there. But we're going to look at politics and wrestling, and we're going to start with some gimmicks. Now, the default gimmick when you talk political wrestling is the evil foreign heel. And I think the personification of that we're going to start with is the Iron Sheik. The Iron Sheik was an anti-American Iranian. There was literal heat between the United States and Iran at the time. And, America Hakpu, and he would come out and cut his promos, and obviously won defeating Bob Backlund for the title before losing it to Hulk Hogan.
Who was in charge of that? Oliver North, right? Is that when that all happened?
That was the Iran Contra.
That was
Contra.
Yeah.
Okay, it was after. Okay, I'm trying to put
it. The hostages were like 1980.
Yeah,
like 79 and 80, and Contra was that broke in like 86, 87.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, and the Sheik came in, which is funny. The quick shout out, Mike, as a filmmaker. Quick shout out to the documentary on steroids, faster, stronger, better, where he opened the documentary talking about, as a kid, I understood what evil was, and his name was the Iron Sheik. And which I think as a kid remembering the Foreign Heels, I mean, a lot of those too young to remember the evil Middle East and the Soviet Union. The Foreign Heel worked.
Yeah. What about the Russians?
Well, that's what I was talking about with the Russians, the Soviets. Now I want to flip away from the evil Foreign Heel and get to a very polarizing gimmick that was, in my experience, in 30 years plus watching wrestling, the only heel, and I use that term loosely, who ever was completely justified was the character of Muhammad Hassan. Now, Muhammad Hassan, for those that don't remember, was he was an Arab American who his gimmick was he was angry at the United States because of the treatment he was receiving from Americans who blamed him for 9/11 because he was brown, because he was Muslim. And that's exactly what was happening. Now, of course, this character who could have been such a good figure for promo, for the, how they say sometimes the polarizing character works, in all the infinite wisdom of the WWE, they made him the villain, and over time slowly dropped the nuance and just straight made him a terrorist, which, obviously you remember the sad issue with him having the terrorist cells come out and attack the Undertaker, which aired the same day as the London bombings. So I want to bounce the thought off you guys real quick before we move on. The Iron Sheik is a great example of the evil Foreign Heel that works, and Muhammad Hassan is an example of how you can do that wrong. Now, Rico, that goes to what you mentioned earlier with religion, because Muhammad Hassan could have easily been they instead of touching on the Muslim side, they more touched on the Arab side. But that shows that no religion is safe, no political side is safe when Vince McMahon's writing team gets a hold of you. So I'm going to bounce this to you guys. Mike, I'm going to start with you. What, real quick, the difference between the good Foreign Heel that works and the bad terrorist that didn't? Where's that disconnect?
The disconnect comes with eras. EARAS. Eras in 1984, when the Iron Sheik was WWF World Champion in January 23rd, losing to Hogan. We had Ronald Reagan for president. We didn't have internet. Most people either had no cable TV or very little cable TV. Wrestling fans were more apt to believe what they were sold. In 2006, when Muhammad Hassan came along, and we're 5 years past, 9/11 in 2001, people are more cynical. They're more sarcastic. The Muhammad Hassan, the way that I experienced that as a fan was they were trying to make the fans the heels. If you boo this character, Muhammad Hassan, as a fan, you are doing exactly what he is telling you that you are doing. You're being bigoted against the Arab American. Now, here's the problem is twofold. One, if anyone did a simple internet search at the time, they find out that the guy was not even Arab American. He was Italian. Correct. The second thing that you find out is that it did not read as real. The man who plays the Iron Sheik, I'm sorry, I forget his name right now. He is legitimately Iranian. Mm-hmm. So when he comes out and he loves America, he loves being American in real life, but because he's a legitimate badass, Kozlo, I believe is his name, the Iron Sheik, he read as legit. Muhammad Hassan read as a guy playing a wrestling character very well, but they were trying to do too much nuance. Once again, this was the post-Attitude Era of the post-Attitude Era. WWE was the Ruthless Aggression Era, which was kind of a weird marble of reality TV, Kardashian-type stuff with, and just it didn't always work. And one thing about Muhammad Hassan is that he did have one pay-per-view main event. Him and his manager wrestled Hogan and Shawn Michaels. They had one pay-per-view main event, but the actual real-life guy was not committed to pro wrestling because once the WWE decided to drop his character, he was out of the business. Yeah. So The point I'm making, I'm trying to make, is several points at once. A, the actual talent was not terribly committed to the business, and that probably read through on some level. B, it was almost like WWE was trying to be too smart for its own good. We are going to take this nuanced thing of the fans have this subconscious level of bigotry, but if the fans don't want to be pointed out that they're the bad guys, the fans don't want to be heels. When I do the angry wrestling fan thing and I point out that the WWE fans support the WWE blindly, whether it's all the topics, the Saudi Arabia shows, the women, Martha Hart. If I point that out on Facebook, people don't want to admit that they're at fault as fans because the fans aren't enlightened enough for the most part to admit to their own human faults. So that's how I think. That's why I think one worked. The Iron Sheik worked. Muhammad Hassan, 25 years later, didn't work.
That's a fair point. Now, moving on, continuing with the idea you talked about the character, another example of somebody who was pitched that was not I shouldn't say well received, but that was received differently, was when Dutch Mantel returned to the WWE as the Zeb Coulter character with Jack Swagger and the Real Americans. Zeb Coulter was a anti-immigrant, angry American character who was supposed to be the bad guy. However, feuding with Alberto Del Rio, who was legitimately the Mexican aristocrat character, your audience very much embraced the Zeb Coulter character. When you have a core audience that tends to be more conservative, more Southern, somebody who comes out with a big beard and a fishing vest and talks about how, these immigrants come in and take our jobs and everything, and the crowd cheers, it kind of didn't work. And a lot of people don't remember in the build up to WrestleMania, when Jack Swagger was challenging for Alberto Del Rio's title, they filmed a vignette that appeared on YouTube where they were recording in front of a green screen, and the camera kind of panned over to where you saw sort of at an angle. You could see they were in front of a green screen, and Zeb Coulter completely broke character. He explained like I don't want to hurt anybody. This is just an act. And he referred to Jack Swagger by his real name. He referred to Alberto Del Rio by his real name. He called him his friend.
That's because the guy on Fox News tried to pick on him, and
yes.
So they
right. Which now the problem with that was they kept the character going with the adding of Cesaro, among other things. And I think that goes to the Muhammad Hassan side, where you had a character, and if you remember in WCW, late WCW, Kurt Hennig and the Wyndhams, when they formed the West Texas Rednecks, you had this angry cowboy group that was supposed to be the heels in their feud with a rap artist. And of course, the Georgia Southern WCW fans, they don't want to cheer Master P against Kurt Hennig. They're going to boo the crap out of the rappers, and the Cowboys were cheered. So, Rico, I'm curious. You talked gimmicks a lot today. When you get someone like a Zeb Coulter or a West Texas Redneck, where you have a political character that's supposed to be the villain but isn't and is embraced by the crowds, how do you, as a performer, how do you adapt to that?
It happened to me.
How's that?
I came out as a heel. I was a heel as a stylist, and then when I came out the makeup character, I was a heel.
That's true.
Fans,
the crowds love the Billy and Chuck angle.
Yeah, but then they didn't like me cheating. But when I went to the Adrian Street character, they turned me face. That's why I got squashed on Raw and went back. I went back to SmackDown as a face. Japan did the same thing. So the fans are going to dictate, and unfortunately, the wrestlers and the wrestling world behind the scene guys have given the fans that power. They will dictate who they want and who they don't want. Now, as far as this gentleman, the Italian guy, the Muhammad Hussein, or what was his name?
Muhammad Hassan was the character.
Okay, Italian guy.
Yes.
WWE, unless they invest a lot of money in you, are not going to help you with a character or the development of a character. Hence, I've said this before. They just told me I was going to go out and be a stylist for Billy Chuck. They didn't tell me what kind of stylist, what to do. They told me I was going to be an Adrian Street character. Well, the old Adrian Street character was a womanizer, stepped on women. Well, you can't do that in the 2000s because you get assassinated. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So,
Yeah.
but WWE with people like me, I'm not going to say like, Brock Lesnar and these other superstars, they've already got their character and they help them with it. But other guys, if WWE gives you a character, you're going to have to sit back, flesh it out, decide what you're going to do, and keep evolving that character as Undertaker has evolved from when we first saw him with Paul Bearer to where he is now.
Yes.
Undertaker has always evolved. He's always kept up with the times. Hogan used to evolve, keep up with the times. Rock did. You guys can't keep doing the same thing over and over. And with these other things, WWE is not helping themselves because they'll just take somebody and go, you're going to be this, and then now work it out. And then they give these writers who have no experience in it, and they try to make you into a character. So when it flops,
right, your script would have saved Muhammad Hassan, Mike. Could have put him in that angle.
Well, here's the thing, guys. I like Rico may not know. I think Dan does. I did have a job interview for WWE Creative Writing Team, and the reason I think Rico said it to me privately, the reason why they didn't hire me is because I have a clue.
yeah,
Because and here's one thing, guys. I want to speak up a little bit on this. Everybody says, oh, the writers of WWE are so lousy. Who hires those writers? The McMahons are the ones hiring them. So after 20 years of people complaining about the WWE writers, why don't people complain about the McMahons? And that goes back to my theory that wrestling fans and wrestlers, have a daddy complex when it comes to Vince McMahon and Triple H. A lot of wrestling fans don't have good family relationships with their father, so they look at Vince McMahon as their fantasy world father. He provides good wrestling, we love him. He kills Owen Hart or whatever he does, and we hate him.
Oh my God.
So there you go.
Moving on.
No, I'm just telling you the beat of the fan that I see. It was Glenn Beck actually who feuded with Zeb Coulter. I just looked it up. Glenn Beck.
Ah, good. Well,
and
as
plus,
Dutch Mantel continues to be popular.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing with that, guys. I can give you a real quick insight. I went to a show in Providence, Rhode Island during the time of the Zeb Coulter character, and Jack Swagger just wrestled, on the show, and he did the "We the People" thing, and the crowd got up and they did the "We the People" thing. And this is my theory. This is around 2014, I believe. The idea is that the wrestling fan is so starving to latch on to something like Stone Cold Steve Austin, like The Rock is here in Philadelphia, The Rock is here in New York. The wrestling fan, the WWE fan especially, is dying, is desperate to latch onto something and enjoy themselves. So when they see anything, heel or babyface, bigoted or not, if it's a call along, if it's a catchphrase, "We the People," they forget about, oh, this guy's the bad guy, we should not be doing "We the People." They just say, this is fun. This is something we can do that's fun for us. That's why they do it.
That goes to the first push when the crowd started pushing for Daniel Bryan. Triple H mentioned in an interview that he didn't believe it was Daniel Bryan that was over. He said it was the yes chant that was over. Turns out he was wrong, but moving on to another popular gimmick in wrestling, something that's looked back fondly for those who remember, there was a good run of about a year or so where Bob Backlund had done the Mr. Backlund for President character. And that worked. Now, on the flip side of that, the Bob Backlund character worked. He did so great with the hybrid of the crazy cuckoo along with the still little snippets of white meat babyface hidden in there, which I think is why it worked. Honestly, the Backlund for President character, he's the only one that could have pulled that off. Now, on the other side of the President, if you remember in WCW, on an appearance, a talk show appearance, Hulk Hogan announced he was running for president, which of course was a gimmick as part of the NWO. That ended when he came back to WCW and participated in the Finger Poke of Doom, which is still the greatest angle in wrestling history. Sarcasm aside. So, obviously you can have two different gimmicks, one that works and one that doesn't. Now, continuing with the idea of one that works and one that doesn't, we talked earlier about the Iron Sheik, the foreign heel. In WWE, when they first introduced the Rusev character, he was pushed as the Russian foreign heel, despite being Bulgarian, the Bulgarian brute from Russia. He got adopted by Russia. He had the Russian wife. He had the Russian character, the Gold Star medal. Now, Rusev, if you remember, he was thrown into a series of feuds with these American characters. He feuded with Zack Ryder. He feuded with Big E. He feuded with Titus O'Neil, who came to the ring dressed like Apollo Creed, which he knew he was going to lose that match. And then, of course, his feud with Jack Swagger, and he came out on top, leading to WrestleMania, his run with the U.S. title against John Cena, came out on the tank. And now, Rigo, I'm going to go with you here on this one. The character worked, but eventually faltered because he was booked to lose. He lost the feud to John Cena and kind of lost that momentum. Does the evil foreign heel only really work if he's winning? Can you have an evil foreign heel or a big evil foreign character at all that loses to the Americans constantly?
Not constantly, because then you ruin his evilness. If he's always losing to the Americans, then they're going to go, yeah, you know what? Cena's going to beat him. Yeah, the fans will predict what's going on. Now, if he always wins, like the Iron Sheik, he held the title till freaking Hogan took it after Rocky III.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? If you're going to have somebody hold, like Honky Tonk Man, how long did he hold the Intercontinental title?
14 months.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mike,
until
you okay over there?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, until what? In 30 seconds, the Ultimate Warrior came out because nobody showed up. I'll take on anybody. And 14 seconds later, Honky Tonk is no more. But he was a heel. Challenge. Yeah, he was the heel, but everybody wanted him to lose, and he didn't lose.
Right.
And that's how you keep one of these heels. Now, about the foreign heel, the Sheik stayed for the longest time because we feuded with Iran. It was still up in regular news, and it was now in wrestling.
Right.
You see, so...
I'm glad you mentioned that, Rigo, because the last character I want to touch on was my personal favorite. I'm sorry, Mike. Your video feed on my end is twitchy.
Okay. What's that?
Literally twitchy. Rico, are you seeing that, or are you seeing a normal feed, Mike?
No, I see normal. I just see the flag in the back. It says "beautiful people." It waves once in a while, but everything else is fine with him.
Okay.
And he's
waving. Seeing a choppy video connection here. So this is going to make the YouTube video a little interesting.
I'm not that good looking anyway.
Maybe
listen.
You're nodding. You're excessively nodding in agreement with everything I'm saying. But going back to what you were talking about, Rico, with the foreign heel that worked, my personal favorite, and this is even as a kid, I thought it was such an awesome character, was in the build up to WrestleMania 7 was Hulk Hogan against a recently turncoat traitor Sergeant Slaughter.
Yeah.
Now, for those that don't remember that gimmick, Sergeant Slaughter, after he left for a couple years with the AWA, he came back and he was a relic of the Cold War. He was a heel in the sense that he was mad that Nikolai Volkov and the Russians, the Americans had kind of started to embrace the Soviet Union, and that jaded edge slowly turned to sympathizing with the Iraqis during the Gulf War and his various cutting of promos. And I think the last bit there is the narrative that worked really well, at least for me as a fan. Now, unfortunately, ticket sales and history tends to say that was not a popular enough character. The moving of the venue for WrestleMania shows that was not a popular character in the long term, but I think it worked. And then the Get My Country Back character, that was, I think, the last great bastion they had of a real life heel, because a real life foreign heel, any attempt they've had since then when Rusev came out, we weren't really at war with Russia, and obviously Muhammad Hassan, the character's there. So, you have, go ahead, Rico.
They did the same thing with Rob Conway when he switched from America and went to the French.
That's right, because I forgot that there you are, Mike. I forgot he came out. He was disguised as a soldier.
Soldier, wow.
Yeah, and then he turned on the Dudley Boys. That's right. I forgot about that bit.
See, but
good.
They make it this big.
Yeah.
They do not give time. The WWE wants things as a microwave. They don't invest into what they're trying to build. They want it then and now. They don't understand that the public needs time to digest, to understand the backstory. Well, why did this guy from America all of a sudden go with the Rougeau? What were they called? The French.
They were the what were they called? That was the La Resistance.
La Resistance.
Right.
Yeah, La Resistance. There was no backstory. It was like a couple of weeks, and then he went to La Resistance. You had no time to get behind Rob Conway. You gave America no reason. I mean, he wasn't a superstar. He wasn't All-American. You did no vignettes. Nothing about him winning awards, winning the Purple Heart, the Cross. You gave him nothing as an American for us to despise him to go.
Right. No, and that's a good point. And, it's funny. You look at, and Mike, I'm going to bounce this to you, is you look at the current product with the WWE versus AEW, is the WWE has pay-per-views every couple weeks. AEW's only got a few a year. I think some of the characters like your Iron Sheik, your Sergeant Slaughter being Iraqi were able to develop because you didn't have to build to a big match every 3 weeks. So, what do you, go ahead, Mike.
Well, I just want to say, what's appearing to me is that things like the Rougeaus, the amazing French Canadians, or the Mounties, the Quebecers, French Canadian gimmicks don't really work as well as good old fashioned Russian, Iranian.
Right.
There's something about certain countries, and we can just be honest and say that as Americans, we're kind of brought up in this post Cold War environment. Our enemies are, in our minds, not, Russians, Iranians, Middle Easterns. That's what we're brought up in. I'm not saying that's good or bad, but when you start getting nuanced and you're saying, oh, the French, they're snotty and they smoke cigarettes in cafes, that is not as threatening as a Russian who wants to blow you up. Right. So it's just simple things.
But the French in France, in Paris, are snotty against Americans. I know. I did a competition show, and the further I got away from Paris, the nicer the people were.
But Rico,
for me as an American.
Right. But Rico, the difference is 99 out of 100 people haven't had the life experience you've had that have gone over to Paris and had it. Most people in the Walmart in Jacksonville have not gone to Paris for a bodybuilding show and been treated with bigotry because they're an American. You see what I'm saying? Right. But if you grow up in any part of America and you turn on the TV and you have Khrushchev, or you have the Rocky IV, once
Gaddafi.
again, right?
You got Gaddafi. You got what was the big African?
Talk about Idi Amin.
Idi Amin. You got people like that, or just total dictators. Fidel Castro. You got stuff
big,
like
bold,
that.
Once again, it goes back to, once again, give them credit because it's not my thought. It's big, bold colors.
Right.
Yeah.
Good, evil. And I'll say this. I think the Rusev thing did work. I mean, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago at WrestleMania, you had Rusev versus Cena for the U.S. title. They had a flag match. It was total throwback 80s.
Yeah.
But it was, Cena was actually getting cheered. And I think Rusev was getting cheered too sometimes. But the feud actually did work. And I think Rico, as the guest here, has really nailed something that's gold gems. The WWE, for whatever reason, with all this airtime they have to fill, does not give enough time for these characters to marinate, to develop.
Yep.
Look, Honky Tonk Man was very hated, but he came in 1986 as a babyface, and they did this whole thing where they were pushing him against Savage, who was the heel Intercontinental Champion. They had a vote. The fans had a vote of confidence. There was nuances that, and that's why it upsets me, guys, as a wrestling fan and also a writer who had a job interview for the WWE and was not hired. It upsets me when I see the poor quality of content coming through the WWE because I know I could do better. So it's frustrating to me that the fans are suffering through horrible, god-awful WWE wrestling for the last 20 years because the McMahons, for whatever reason, they want to fill their egos and hire Hollywood hack writers and college interns at bargain basement prices.
And they hire wrestlers for a lower rate. I mean, they bring in these kids who are phenomenal wrestlers, and I'm not taking nothing from them, but Vince has a habit of going, okay, we'll hire you. Then he fires you. Then he brings you back at a lower rate. And then if you get too much, then he fires you and then brings you back at a lower rate. See, I told Vince, you're going to release me. You ain't getting me back. I'm sorry. I'm not going to play your game. I'm not some 23-year-old kid. I'm 44 years old. You're going to pay me what I'm worth.
Right.
And after I left, I went back into police work and I did it. When they came back into town, he had Tommy Dreamer come up to me. Rico, would you consider coming back? I said, tell Vince no.
Was this at a show in Vegas?
This is when they came to Vegas and I was a cop. I happened to see Tommy at a hotel while doing my work. And I said, tell Vince no. He had me once. That was it.
Speaking of coming back, I'm curious, since I've got you and it's fresh in my mind. It's not related to what we were talking about, but I wanted to ask your thought on it. The Women's Royal Rumble this year, they brought back the Santina Marella character where Santina plays a woman. But when he came to the ring on your Good to Me music. Yeah. I'm curious how you feel about that being repurposed in that side. Which, Vince, by the way, that is my favorite entrance theme of that era by far none. Part of the reason your character worked so well as a fan of yours is because of how awesome that song is.
Well, thanks. They developed it. There's a friend I am a fan who is handicapped. His name's Kevin, and I stay in touch with him through Messenger all the time. And he wants to be a wrestler. He's already wrestled regular wrestling and is pretty good at it. Oh, cool. And we talk from time to time. When he heard my music at that Royal Rumble, he jumped out of his seat, thought I was coming, and he saw Santino come in. Oh. He was so pissed. Yeah. He thought I was coming. But, Vince told me, your character's not over no more. We're getting rid of it. I said, I just held the belts.
Right.
And you just took photos of me, Jackie, and Charlie on the cover of the magazine.
I was about to say that was a damn lie. You guys were still getting the good reactions.
Well, this is what he tells me. And it's all because I asked for $1,000 a week raise. $1,000 a week. That was it. I didn't ask for $36,000 like Goldberg was getting. And I wrestled 46, 48 weeks a year. And then sometimes not 4 days, sometimes 5 days a week. I was always up in the same semi-main event, because I was an entertainer. So I said, after 3 years, give me a raise, Vince. I wanted to go from $75,000 base to $125,000 base. That just base, not counting on everything else. And it wasn't selfish. So it just really ticked me off that he let me go on that and then wants me to come back. Right. And I'm already a police officer at that time. And like I said, the first time I told Tommy, because I know Tommy, no. And then he came back with Tommy Dreamer the next year, Dreamer and Heyman. And I was at the hotel, and Heyman asked, I said, Paul, I'm going to put it to you simple. Not only tell him no, but tell him fuck no.
Good for you, Rico.
I said, I am not under his thumb. Okay? He had me. He should have paid me what I was worth. I did everything he told me to. I put people over,
Right.
And that was my job. That was my job as a mid-card guy. Put people over. I wasn't going to be a Stone Cold, Triple H, Batista, Cena. That wasn't my role. My role was to help other people, and I accepted it. That's fine.
Right.
But then, like I said, Rico the stylist character, people took to it. Rico the makeup character, it took to it. But I said, I made Vince give me time to develop these characters and make people like them. Maybe that's why I'm still remembered 15 years later. And that's the problem with Vince now with these young talent guys. They're young, they want to be on TV, they want to be a wrestler, but they don't understand the old school part of it. You got to be kayfabe. You cannot be part of Raw and then get the show done and then call the guys on the dirt sheets prior to the show and then tell them what's going to happen. And they put the dirt sheets out prior to the show being aired.
Yeah.
There's a lack of respect for the business of wrestling. There is a lack of just
integrity.
You talk about your character, Rico. I want to finish with the final image. We talk about politics and wrestling. This was an angle involving politics, and I still want to know who thought it was a good idea. It was a debate held in the ring about the Iraq War in a pro-con, and it was between Chris Nowinski, who was a legit Harvard graduate,
JBL.
And absolute master of the microphone, Scott Steiner. And I'm bringing this up to you, Rico, because
I never saw it.
Monday Night Raw. I remember this vaguely.
Yeah, it was a debate.
Yeah.
Your eventual group, obviously, it boiled down to basically Scott Steiner flexing. If you guys know the Team America theme, is basically what it boiled down to. America's awesome, and you're a bitch for not thinking so. And then 3-minute warning came out and beat everybody up. But it goes to, if you remember, they also did hosted an event at a college campus where Mick Foley and JBL debated economics and various other political things. I'm ending with that thought because the idea that you can shoehorn politics. This was a feud that had no business getting political, no reason for the Iraq War or politics in general to be part of Scott Steiner feuding with Nowinski, feuding with 3-minute warning. So I'm curious, give you guys the final thought here, is why shoehorn something in that the crowd was going to reject? And obviously, as much as I love Scott Steiner, not the kind of person I'd hand a microphone and say, lecture me on global American politics.
Mike, you go first.
Mike, you can have the first thought, and then Rico, as the guest, will give you the final word.
I'm going to quote.
Mike, go ahead.
I'm going to quote two sources. The first one is the term 57 channels and nothing on, which was a Bruce Springsteen song from the early 90s. 57 channels and nothing on. And then my dad would tell me when I was starting, to write films and starting to make my own public access TV show and stuff like that. My dad said, hey, there's 100 cable channels on and they all need something to air. So my point is, if you just look at that with WWE, even when they only had Raw and SmackDown, that's 4 hours, going back a generation when it was 4 hours when those things happened around 2005, 2006.
Actually, they had 6 hours. They had Raw, SmackDown, Velocity, and Heat.
Okay. So so even worse.
Yeah, worse.
For a sports entertainment company that does distances themselves from good old-fashioned pro wrestling, Jim Crockett, Vern Gagne style pro wrestling, for a sports entertainment company, they have to have, in Vince McMahon's mind, not mine, their fill of entertainment. Mm-hmm. And if it's the topic of the day, which is we're going to have a Hillary Clinton and Obama, mock wrestling match, or we're going to have
I intentionally left out the impersonator matches. That's just insulting to even talk about.
Well, the point is they're filling time, And I think Jim Ross talks about that once again on his podcast, Grilling JR. At some point, as wrestling fans, we see there was a website and a book, Wrestle Crap, the Wrestle Crap book and website. Look at that, folks. That's okay. Are you sending me a message, Rico? With that?
What happened?
You just showed me your teeth,
he
man.
started talking about his opinion, and you got up and showed him your gun. We assumed, okay, Mike, you're obviously done talking.
I'm getting a drink of juice.
Hands up, Rico. Hands up. No, it's all good.
No, I'm a Second Amendment guy. When I came in, I just came out. I had a doctor's appointment. I just ran in, turned my computer on. Right, I had no time to change.
No, I appreciate
that. But I'm a Second Amendment guy.
Rico, we appreciate you being here, man. This is cool.
Absolutely.
I'm so sorry for scaring.
Well, Rico, I'm going to be trying this juicing thing in a couple of days, so I'll keep you posted. But my point is simply, guys, is my dad said it. Bruce Springsteen said it. There are hours and hours and hours. And to the WWE's credit, as much as I am a cynic and a critic of the WWE, they haven't stopped doing this stuff in a long time. WCW fell off the rails and they could never come back. WCW tried to stop their shows for 2 weeks and do a pay-per-view where they resurrected all the belts with new champions. And then eventually WCW was done. AWA, Vern Gagne, Greg Gagne, they're done. Bill Watts, done. World Class with the Von Erichs, done. All these wrestling promotions in my lifetime have come and gone. ECW, even stuff that people like now, Lucha Underground seems to be done. Impact went from having a show. I said this meme today. I said, TNA Wrestling once had Kurt Angle and AJ Styles. Now, Impact Wrestling has Sami Callihan and Joey Ryan. You tell me if that's progress. Okay? So the point is, all these promotions have come and gone. And for whatever it's worth, WWF/WWE/WWF is still standing. So I give them credit for standing. But the point is, maybe they should take a break, because creatively, they've been on fumes for 10 or 15 years. I hate to say it, but I just did.
No, that's fair. Rico, I appreciate you coming. I just want to say, as a huge fan, when I mentioned you guys being over, when I was stationed out in San Diego, the barracks, the guys in the barracks, you were always one of our favorites between the stylist gimmick and then the Adrian Street. A huge fan. So I appreciate it.
Because you understood it.
Absolutely.
You understood it. See?
I got the character.
Yeah.
And personally, they did a bit with, I believe it was Hardcore Holly. He snipped a bit of the back of your hair.
Yeah, cut my hair.
That facial expression you made, Mike, you've said it before as a filmmaker. You can tell a better story with a good facial expression than you can with 1,000 words, and that sold it. So I've been a Rico fan ever since.
Yeah.
But so I appreciate you coming out. I'm going to give you the final word on the thoughts for the day.
Well, I'm going to go with Mike here, and this is to AEW, Impact, and WWE. And one famous person said it: know your role. Know your role. Your role is a sports entertainment business. We don't want to hear about China. We don't want to hear about Iran. We don't want to hear about the Middle East. We don't want to hear about this stuff. You're supposed to take us away from all that is really devastating to us and put us in a world that we forget about it and enjoy each other again and get entertained. Okay? You cannot entertain somebody by bringing a character on and 2 weeks later putting a belt on them. Mm-hmm. You cannot tell a story about somebody. Now, they're doing pretty good with Drew McIntyre. He's got a backstory. They're starting to come up with it, and it's working a little bit. Mm-hmm. Okay? You need to get that type of thing. You can't just bring somebody, he's debuting, and then 2 weeks later he's got a title. Or now you bring Brock Lesnar back after 18 times leaving, and you put a belt on him, and he doesn't say a God-blessed word. He just looks at you, and Paul Heyman talks for him. Listen, I don't give a crap about Paul Heyman. I know he can talk. I know he's a bullshit artist. I want to know what's on Brock Lesnar's mind. How are you going to be the champion? Why am I going to cheer, or why am I going to hate you as a champion? Carrillo, all of them. Anybody, You've got to take time to develop your characters and get away from real world. Get away from the real world. Like Bruce Willis. How many times does that guy actually save the friggin' world? Armageddon, Fifth Element, Death Wish, whatever.
Right.
How many times does he actually do it? He doesn't. But everybody loves him as an actor because he knows what he's doing there. Yes, it's cut, take 2, take 5. The Expendables, you know, they're all old, washed up actors. Every one of them.
But I think that's the appeal, though. Because they're old, washed up actors.
Exactly. People want to know what they're doing. Look, he can still do it.
Right.
Stallone, Statham, all of them.
Dolph.
They can still.
I'll tell you, if
Dolph.
And you see that with the older wrestlers too. If they could still go, a Hogan Flair match would sell out over anybody that's wrestling today.
You want to know why? Because they know how to tell a story.
Exactly.
They know, and if you let the wrestlers, Hogan and Flair, build it up, have a couple of matches, interfering, yes and no, or a talk, or just sit there and badmouth him.
Right.
Yeah, he thinks he's got it. I could have beat that guy. I could have beat that guy in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And then you ain't nothing. You're old. And then all of a sudden now you got this feud. But that's just an example. But you got to take people away from reality, because you know what? Reality right now sucks. Yeah, reality is depressing. And a lot of people don't need more depressing upon depressing.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Now watch WWE put some Chinese guy in, and all of a sudden now he's the champion.
The next women's champion is going to be coronavirus. You watch.
Yeah.
A 2020 themed character is going to debut in a couple years here. You watch. But no, Rico, Mike, I appreciate you guys coming out. We've said a lot today. Quick shout out, Mike Messier can be found MikeMessier.com. You can find Wrestling with the Future. The Wrestling with the Future podcast is on Facebook. Where Wrestling with the Future podcast is on Twitter at Wrestling Future, no G. I am personally on Facebook at @theman_WWTF. For Wrestling with the Future, for the Refs Roundtable, we said a lot today. I'm Dan the Man Sebastiano, and I will see you next time I have something to say.